Thanks, guys, for that first carrier update this morning, as always. Right now, we're going to welcome Eric Kulisch, our air cargo editor, to the show this morning, talking a little bit about what's going on in the air cargo markets. Eric, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, guys. Glad to be on Tuesday. I can't believe you guys aren't leading off the show with the Tennessee Chattanooga Moccasins winning the Southern Conference Championship. What's going on?
You know, I watched it last night. I watched the buzzer beater. My friends that are sports reporters here in town were there sending me video from the floor. They said it was absolutely electric. It's trending on Twitter if you want to go check it out. The Mocs are going to the NCAA tourney, and as Isaiah would say, go Mocs.
Yeah, hey, go Mocs. I was watching that on TV. They had a couple great games. They had a blowout on Saturday.
Yeah, it sounded great.
Just blew out, who was it on Saturday? I forget, Wolford, I think it was.
Yep.
But yeah, great game.
It was awesome to watch them beat Furman last night as well. Well, Eric, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday. Unusual for you. We're used to talking to you on Thursday. But let's dig right into it. What's going on in the world of air cargo right now with our top story of the day?
Well, I think the word is Ukraine. I mean, it's coloring the entire market just like it is with supply chains all over, and the trickle down effects of that war and the closure of the U.S. and European sanctions on Russia, closing their airspace, sanctioning their technology exports to Russia, Boeing and Airbus cutting off, saying they're no longer going to supply parts and software and other technical support, and pretty much crippling the Russian aerospace industry over time. And then you have the Russians, tit for tat, closing their airspace to most of the Western commercial carriers. So, that's just having huge ripple effects. The Lufthansa Cargo had a briefing with the reporters last week and said they think that 10% of capacity is now eliminated from the market because planes have to reroute or detour all the way around Russia instead of direct flights over to get to some of those key markets in Asia. So the capacity losses, it comes in a couple of ways. Oh, and Seabury, another consulting firm, at one point said they estimated a 20% drop already, which is about the equivalent of 9 747 freighters in a week. So, and the reason for that is that now you have to maybe fly 2.5, 3.5 hours extra, roundabout through, let's say you're coming from Frankfurt, Germany or whatever. You got to fly Romania, Hungary, Kazakhstan down to China. So you got to take this roundabout route. You got to carry more fuel. And so you can't put as much cargo on. You also are taking longer time in the air, so you can't sweat your assets as much. So, over time, there'll be slightly fewer flights. So it all adds up to about 10% or whatever capacity loss in the market. And, yesterday I reported about Finnair, which is a relatively small airline, but they have to, they're an example of the types of adaptations that carriers are having to make. They fly out of Helsinki mostly and also Stockholm. And, it's really impacting their routes from such a northerly spot there. It could take them 3.5 hours at least extra out of their way, and even longer coming back because of the way the winds blow. So, directionally, the return flight back from Asia takes even longer because of they're running into the jet winds or whatever. So, they just said that they canceled a bunch of their wide body flights and then reinstated a few this week. And they said the main reason they're reinstating or putting in some of these flights is passenger flights is because of cargo, because the air cargo market is so strong and rates are jumped up 20 or 30% in the last week, that that's kind of offsetting the losses of fuel, personnel, and all these other costs from these detours.
Yeah, Eric. So I mean, we're talking about time, not being able to turn the assets as quickly as possible. We're talking about more fuel, headwinds because of the difference there. So there's less capacity, can't carry as much volume. But let's talk about that fuel. Has there been an impact on the jet fuel as well? Is that price rising as well, gouging them even further?
I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, just like you're seeing at the gas pump, in your local neighborhood, as John Kingston's reported about diesel prices, off the charts. I think gas has hit a record here. Regular unleaded gas in the U.S. has hit a record of about $4.17 a gallon. And same thing's happening in the jet fuel market. Last I saw, and this is constantly changing. It was $141 a barrel for jet fuel a week ago. It was like $111. So about a 26% increase in a week. It's nearly doubled since last year. It was already going up, a fair amount as the economy started growing and coming out of COVID. But now with all the uncertainty and some of the Russian oil not being serviced or bought as much out of concern about sanctions, you're just seeing this huge push on prices in the jet fuel area, and then another impact you're seeing is some freight airlines are considering war surcharges on their invoices for freight. So we've heard about Cargolux putting in a 20% surcharge, and FedEx last week, interestingly, added what they call a peak season surcharge, although we know peak season's technically late fall, but they've had this peak season surcharge in place, I think, through most of COVID. It's kind of perpetual, but this week they raised it by 20 cents or so, and they just said it was due to ongoing disruptions and air cargo capacity. But, I think if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, we can call it a war surcharge.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about, Eric. We talked about that story yesterday, and something that was interesting was that FedEx was refusing to use the language of Ukraine or Russia or war in that announcement about those surcharges, even though they're talking about the impacts on their Asia-Pacific, European, and then intra-European networks as well as being victims of those surcharges. And they mentioned them lasting through the end of March as well, which is, as you mentioned, if walks like a duck, talks like a duck, kind of seems speculative about the same timing of the conflict, right? Could you see other carriers like this now implementing those surcharges and being secretive, not really secretive, but kind of being like sweeping the actual cause of them under the rug?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people I talked to, said that they didn't think there was that much activity in implementing war surcharges. Although like I said, I think there's been a few examples, and I know some carriers are debating it or considering it. But other air cargo officials or experts say that, look, prices are it's a seller's market. Prices have been high since COVID. They fluctuate some, but in the high band of the benchmark. And so now they're going up again, especially on key routes like Asia, Europe. And so, they'll just build it in. Most people, it'll be in the price. So you don't necessarily have to call it a war surcharge. But in this case, FedEx did a surcharge addition, and they call it their peak season surcharge. So we'll have to see. I don't know, but either way, you're going to be paying more for your shipments.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you call it. It is what it is, and it looks like others. They've got to at least
fuel
be
surcharges.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and on the freight side, I think for a while now we've been seeing more fuel surcharges being tacked on too. So that'll have a trickle down effect as well to the shippers.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, let's switch gears a little bit to surface transportation and truckers. We've got Ukrainian truckers that are going back to Ukraine to fight, to support the cause, and sucking capacity out of Europe as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to cover this Ukraine situation from all angles. It's a tragedy, but it's also fascinating, all the knock-on effects. And we've heard about people, Ukrainian nationals returning to Ukraine to pick up arms and try and fight the Russians. And so I started hearing about truck drivers, naturally one of the groups that are doing this, and Ukrainians constitute a large part of the truck driving force in Europe, in the European Union, in the UK. I don't have exact numbers, but anecdotally, there's a fair number of drivers. And so we don't know how many people are going, but where there's a pretty good sense that drivers are leaving to go fight. And so that could exacerbate to certain degrees ongoing driver shortages that they have in Europe, just like they have here for truckers. I know in the UK, the Road Haulers Association last year said there was about 100,000 shortage of drivers, including about 40,000 who couldn't get their CDL licenses because of COVID restrictions. So this could impact things. And then on the flip side, there's lots of truckers and thousands of trucks stuck in Ukraine or Georgia or other countries that, because of the hostilities and crowded borders and customs procedures and checking of nationality documents, they're kind of trapped with their trucks trying to get out of Ukraine to get back to the European Union and other countries like Turkey and so forth. So it's kind of so that's going to complicate goods movement over time as we try and get these trucks in the right places and if there's enough capacity.
Last thing to talk about this morning, further complicating goods movements, is now you've got port workers that are taking a stand of themselves and saying, we're not going to handle Russian freight. We're not going to deal with Russian imports on the docks. What can you tell us about that so far and the impacts that we could see possibly from that?
Yeah, I know over the weekend or tail end of last week in the United Kingdom, one of the ports, the dock workers refused to take I think it was an LNG or some kind of fuel vessel bulker that came in. They refused to work it with had a load of Russian fuel. So I think it tried to go over to France to offload. So you're going to see that from time to time where, the industry is like self-embargoing almost. And as we know, some of the shipping companies and tanker companies are kind of getting reluctant to move Russian oil, not because there's the sanctions yet, but they don't want to get tripped up or have reputational damage. But I think these dock workers are, take it as an affront or supporting Ukraine. In the U.S., we haven't seen a lot of that, except I noticed some tweets from the ILWU, the West Coast dock workers, saying we're not going to work any Russian cargo coming in. It's probably kind of, I wouldn't call it an empty threat, but the amount of Russian cargo that comes in containers to West Coast ports is pretty small. But still, they're taking a stand and saying if we see it, we're not working it.
Wow, interesting stuff going on. As always, you can catch Eric's stuff on FreightWaves.com and American Shipper as well. And really good stuff. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll catch up to you a little bit later on in the week, Eric. Thank you so much.
All right, go Mox.
Go Mox.